Have y'all had a hard spring, summer? Because I sure have. I've had the hardest time in the garden. I feel like I've been thrown so many hurdles. And I've had moments where I've just felt like I'm not a very good gardener. But it's okay. Because of all the hurdles that we've been thrown this year, and I know you've had some too, it's given us an opportunity to learn and grow and to figure out what we can do to avoid those problems next year. So you see all my brassicas are really growing. I'll be putting everything out. The second week of September, it looks like we're officially going to be getting into our lovely fall weather. I'm just going to talk while I walk over here to let my goats out. What are you smelling, Morrow? I know many gardeners out there that have had their gardens just completely dry up because the sun this year has been intense. And if you had your garden out in blasted sunlight, it most likely probably had issues with completely just drying up, even if you're watering it every day. Yes, I definitely need to oil it. I think you're just gonna be stuck there for the day. There we go. You wanna come on out now? Now, one way I've seen some gardeners avoid that is by installing some shade cloth, which can be an excellent solution. Personally, what I like to do is I like to use the plants. For the most part, it's our tomatoes that really have a hard time getting beaten down with sunlight each day. This year, my squash really helped out a lot. And I'll show you here how this squash plant, and I'm going to do this more next year, I had it grow all the way up. And I've just allowed it to kind of stay on top instead of grow through the panels. And this has given my plants below it a little bit of shade and a little bit of relief, like this one here. In fact, this is my best tomato this year. Still got tomato plants on it, so you'll see how it's mixed in with the squash here. It's starting to succumb to some septoria leaf spot. See all these little spots? Got blight in the beginning and now it's getting some septoria leaf spot, but it's still resisting and it's still growing, and I've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tomatoes on there, and they're starting to blush, if you see. I've saved lots of seeds from this one. Blight and septoria leaf spots are just 2 different types of funguses that your tomato plants can get. My goal in my garden is to breed tomato plants that are capable of resisting those funguses, and I want them to keep growing and giving me tomatoes till the first frost. So far this one's doing pretty good. It's not going to make it to the frost, but this has been the best year I've had yet. Sadly for myself, I lost over 50% of my tomato plants to sickness this year because it got so hot and humid so quickly. Summer came early, came into the springtime. My garden just died. So many of them just died off, which made me sad because in the end I wasn't able to can anything for the year. But we did get enough tomatoes that we were feasting on tomatoes every day. Good news is the tomato plants that are still going, I saved seeds from all of those, and next year we should have a really good year. There's a spider oak right here. And next year I will continue to save seeds from the plants that did even better. But as far as talking about shade goes, One of my favorite things to use for shade are sunflowers. Sunflowers are a great way if you plant them next to your tomatoes or whatever plant that you feel needs extra shade. Make sure you get the real nice tall ones, and they will shade that plant for you. For me, I had a very hard time starting sunflowers this year. I discovered since I put organic matter constantly on top of my mounds to really feed that soil, I have a lot of roly-polies. And roly-polies are great. They break down organic matter for you, but they can also go after other things that you don't want them to, like seeds. So if I directly sow things out here, the roly-polies will eat it, and then they don't even get a chance to sprout. So that was one of the reasons I had a hard time with sunflowers. The second reason is I have mice in my greenhouse, and even when my little sunflowers got too tall for their tops that I put on top of my seed trays, they came around and they ate their little heads off. So to avoid that next year, because I want to get tons of different types of sunflowers, in fact I'm already ordering them. In fact, I highly suggest order your seeds now for next year. Go ahead and start planning it all out and purchase them. But what I'm going to do, my cats, I have 6 cats, y'all, but they don't really come out to the greenhouse, and they don't do a very good job at getting rid of the mice for me out here in the garden. But they love being up at the house. So I'm going to bring one of my card tables up at the house, and I'm going to be planting a ton of sunflowers up there. And then when they're good size and ready, I'll put them out. And I'll probably use a little bit of diatomaceous earth, because diatomaceous earth is organic. I don't hardly ever use it. I don't find that it works that great, but it can help a little bit. See, there's some marigold seeds here. I'm just going to sprinkle them out. Now, diatomaceous earth only works on killing pests that have exoskeletons. It's not going to work on your worms. It's not going to hurt your worms in the ground. It can harm bees, so be careful when you're sprinkling it. If it gets on the little bee body, it can harm them. For myself, I'm just going to be sprinkling it around the ground because I'm going after the roly-polies. I just need to cut down their population just a little bit because they do have their purpose. And luckily with the diatomaceous earth, like I said, it works okay. It's not going to just eradicate all your bugs in your ground. But you see here, I've got a massive pile of mulch over there that I'm working on moving out into my garden. This mound here has a thick bedding of the chicken bedding that I cleaned out of my chicken coop. Then on top of that I have mulch. So before I put my fall garden out, each one of these rows, along with all my walkways here, will have a fresh bed of mulch on them, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. I've heard from a lot of y'all that are having issues with little critters, little groundhogs, or woodchucks as some people call them, squirrels, raccoons. Me personally, I had issues with armadillos. Armadillos are kind of funny creatures. Not everybody has those. They were digging under my fence, and Nathan was able to solve that with some concrete, if you see here. Plus, if you look down here, he put a nice, thick fence board here. So now those little armadillos can't dig with their cute little noses to get into my garden and uproot everything. They don't do it on purpose. They're just trying to eat grubs, which is a good thing, but not when I just freshly put out some seeds or I have seedlings in my garden. It can be a nightmare. So around the whole perimeter of our chicken run, my whole garden has a chicken run, turkey run over here. We have thick concrete going at the base of the fence line so that we're not having little critters dig in. So So I highly suggest, if you have a garden, fencing. Fencing is so important. If I didn't have a fence, I wouldn't have a garden. I live in the forest and I have so many deer, so many little things that would love to just eat every little last bit of my garden. So having this fence saves me so much. So next year, if it's possible, think about doing a fence. In fact, I've been looking on Facebook Marketplace lately, and I've been seeing a ton of fencing material for free or either very cheap. And again, concrete at the base of the fence works really well at keeping those little critters from digging in. Except one critter it doesn't really work with, you guys, and we've discovered that this year. One of my major issues this spring, summer has been raccoons, and then I had some issues with some foxes, but we were able to remedy that by really beefing up our fence here because it was jumping over the fence and getting in under. So that's another reason we have the concrete there and the board and these little guys here. In fact, I need to get around to painting those. But the raccoons have been absolutely vicious, you guys. They are like little wolverines. We have never ever had attacks on our flock in the spring or summer. Once winter ends, we're always like, oh, relief. No more worrying about predators attacking our flock. But this year, it has been so bad. I know I've heard this from a lot of people, from a lot of different areas, that how all the animals seem extra intense this year at wanting to eat everything. I know in my area specifically, I believe that for us, we have a Rivian plant going in, Amazon, and a Facebook data center. And they've been taking out thousands of acres of trees to put in these buildings. So I have a massive influx of animals that have lost their homes and are desperate. And that is why for us, we have had so many critters come around trying to eat our flock. I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to come out here and do a video, and instead I've had to deal with my little chickens' dead bodies, and it has not been pleasant. It's been a really hard spring, summer. In fact, for me personally, the hardest thing about having a farm, a homestead, is the death aspect. I never get used to it. It's just always upsetting to me. So throughout this spring, summer, y'all, we have lost 8 chickens and 6 turkeys and 2 raccoons. I'm going to show you what we did to solve that issue, because what they were doing, well, we've solved it on this side of the run. In fact, I'll show you over here. This whole side of our run, we've completely shut it down. It's overgrown. So as things die back, we're going to come in here and we're going to have to clean up a lot of this because the raccoon has been climbing in. He's got a little spot he kind of pulled down with his little wolverine hands and climbing over, and we've got some trees that we need to cut down as well because that's another way he can get in, and then he'll, kill a chicken. So that run is completely shut down. This other run, we've worked on it and had time to work on it, and it is raccoon proof. And let me show you what we had to do. So raccoons are tricky. Because they have little hands, they can really pull at things, and their little teeth, they can really gnaw at things like wire. We've got this fence right here. Now, what little raccoons do and how they kill their prey, and if you don't want to hear about this, you can skip to this timestamp here. They take their little hands and they put them through the bars like this. And they grab a chicken and they rip its head off. That's how I can always tell if it's a raccoon or a fox. Because foxes will come in, they will massacre as many birds as they can, run away because they knew they just created huge commotion, wait to see if anything is going to come around and challenge it. If not, it comes back, takes the bodies, and then buries them so that it has them for later. Raccoons don't do that. They'll generally just come in and kill one, maybe two, but they rip their heads off, and it's not a pleasant experience because from there they literally take your poor little chicken and they rip it piece by piece and pull it through the bars. So generally when I come out here, all that's left are like 2 wings and maybe 2 feet, if that. They pretty much take it all. So what I did to fix that, I'll show you. I went around and I installed chicken wire all around the bottom sections. And I had to wire it many times, you see? I've also got wire down low, and I have this chicken wire kind of coming down on the ground like this. You see? That's our concrete there on the outside. Now, it's important to go around many times with the wire because I didn't do that over here on the turkey run area, and he was able to actually pull it. So now that I went around many times to where it's even hard for me to pull it myself, it can't get through and pull this off or down. But since I've done that, that's kept him out. And I think what I'm going to end up also doing is going along on the inside and putting concrete there as well, because the raccoon can dig at that concrete. Let me show you. So if you see here, we went around and put concrete on the outside, but the raccoon can dig through it because of his little hands. You see this? We're going to be getting some concrete, and I'm going to be concreting from the inside instead, because that will be a lot harder for him to get under there, especially with this chicken wire. But you want to hear something good? If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I'm kind of a bug lady. I like my good bugs, and I physically come out here every day and I remove the bad ones. Well, I beat them. I beat the pests this year, you guys. I might see 1 or 2 here and there, and I'm seeing a huge boom of the little beneficial stink bugs. The ones with the little spines on their shoulders. In fact, they were all over this grape plant because Lily and I, we were picking lots of grapes to make wine. I had a suggestion in my comments that I should make some wine, and I thought that was a good idea. So we went ahead and did that, and hopefully by Christmas time, we'll have some good wine that we can enjoy. Yeah, they were all over this, but I've been seeing quite a bit. In fact, I saw one over here eating a worm, which I thought was so cool. So the wonderful thing about coming out here and getting rid of those pests in your garden is that they won't be overwintering in your garden. If you just let them do their thing and don't worry about it, then you're going to have a lot more pests next year. So I always tell my gardener friends, get out there and get rid of the pests. Don't let them overrun. Don't let them take over. I was able to remove all the vine borers, so they're not going to be dropping down into my soil and overwintering. I really highly suggest, if you can, vertical garden. It's, especially if you have a small space, it's a great way to grow more food. And squashes do really well on there. It's also much easier to spot pests. I can see that vine borer and I can remove it. Allowing them to run on the ground, some downsides to that, because for one, it's harder to see where the vine borers are. Two, yes, if you get a vine borer, that vine will continue to grow because it's put out roots all over in other areas, so you might just lose one section of that vine. But what's going to happen is that vine borer is going to drop it down into your soil and come back next year as a moth and lay more eggs. So you're not really doing much to break that cycle. In fact, it's probably just going to get worse. So I'm a big believer in removing the vine borer and really decreasing that population in your garden. Now, I have seen people, and tell me if anybody's tried this because I'd be curious. I'm trying to find a vine that's on the ground here. Here we go. It's got mulch all over the place from removing mulch. So you see this vine here is growing on the ground here. I've seen people bury the vine with soil, or you probably could use mulch, in order to keep the vine borer from getting in. One of the problems I see in that is that vine borers don't just lay their eggs on the actual vine itself. They love to lay eggs on the leaf stem too. And they can work their way down into the actual vine itself. Now my question is, if the vine is buried, does that vine borer probably needs air? I don't know. This is something that I'm curious about, and if anybody's tried it themselves and had success, and it really does keep the vine borers away, then I'd say go for it. That seems like a great idea to keep them. But so I'd honestly be interested to experiment with that a little bit next year, just out of curiosity. In my last video, I was talking to y'all about my cinnamon squash. My cinnamon squash is a squash that my daughter's bunny, Cinnamon, planted for us last year, and it's been doing absolutely great. I haven't had any vine borers in it. The pickleworms can get into the squash, but the plant itself actually closes up and like pushes that pickleworm out, which I find quite fascinating. I've never seen that before. And I was telling y'all that I thought that this was a cinnamon squash right here. This one growing, see? And when it first started to grow, I thought that it looked like a cinnamon squash the way it was growing, its shape. Until I found that it had a pickleworm in it. Then I noticed the pumpkins kept growing and growing and growing, and I was like, oh my goodness, you know what? I know what this is. This is a Big Max pumpkin. And check these out. I've got 6 of them, I think. I even got one growing up here, you guys. In fact, I wish I had showed it to you. I just kind of automatically did it. There was a pickleworm right here. But, gosh, I can't even see the hole where it was. This one's gotten 2 pickleworms. Now, I've learned a lot about pickleworms this year. Sadly, in order to learn a lot about the pickleworms, I lost pretty much all of my spaghetti squash. Still pretty sad about that. But in the process, I learned a lot. And the pickleworms came early this year. You know, people always tell you to plant your squash early because pickleworms come later on in the season. Well, this year they came early, so it didn't matter when I planted my squash. They came anyway. So yeah, I had a pickleworm right in here, and he was out because pickleworms will come out to breathe, I'm assuming, and I just pulled him out. And then that squash can heal. You have to do this early on, obviously. If you just leave a pickleworm in there, eventually the insides of your squash will turn to mush, and there's nothing you can do at that point. So what I've been doing, and how I've learned how to save my squashes, because before I thought that once the pickleworm got in, that's it, I'm doomed. It's not true. I might have one over here. So what you can do, if you don't see that pickleworm, and I know this is mostly for my southern friends, pickleworms are pretty much a southern problem. One over here that had a pickleworm in it, and then I got distracted But what you can do, say the pickleworm's not actually out, you can generally see them in there. And you can get some little fine tweezers. This one. Got a little water in my face. This one here has a little pickleworm hole. And that squash really just wanted to drip all over me. What you can do, I don't have any tweezers right now, is you can actually pull that pickleworm out, okay? And then you can give it to your chickens or squish it, whatever you want to do. So in this situation, in fact, it almost looks like there is no pickleworm in this anymore. And the reason I can tell that is because this hole is actually closing up. So it is a high possibility what happened is a bird or a predator saw that little pickleworm when it was out and it got eaten. Oh, by the way, you guys, more great news. Since I have not been spraying anything in my garden, no neem oil, I don't do BT, although I think BT can be a good solution for things, I just don't personally use it. No copper fungicides, none of that stuff. And I haven't been doing that for, I think it's been 3 years. And each year I have noticed a massive influx of beneficial insects. This year is the first year that I've had so many parasitic wasps. I have hardly had any armyworms, or tobacco hornworms. I've seen a few here and there that the tobacco hornworms will get on my the actual tobacco, especially if they're on the top. The birds love them, they see them and they come down and they eat them. But I can't tell you how many times I've come by and I've seen, you hear that noise that they make? That generally means that there's a predator around, so a hawk could have gone overhead. They always make that noise to kind of let each other know to watch out. Anyway, so I've come through and I've seen either a worm that has little eggs on it or a worm that's all shriveled up. I've had to squish a few here and there, and I've definitely had to pick off some tomato hornworms, but it really has not been that much of an issue. So you see, this is one of the tomatoes. I got to talk about squirrels. I wish I had a grand solution for it, because I know a lot of y'all have issues with squirrels getting into your garden and messing with things, which I'm sure is extremely frustrating. So if anybody has had success on keeping them out of your garden, let me know. I personally don't have squirrel issues. Don't hate me, but I love squirrels. I feed all my squirrels and they're very fat and happy, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't have them coming around. I also have 6 cats, but growing up my family raised squirrels, so I had squirrels running around my house. Our first one, his name was Rocky, and he would run around on our shoulders while we were at the kitchen table, and we would give him little food scraps, or he'd go out and outside and play for a little while, and then come back and scratch at the door to be let back in. And he was the cutest thing. So I kind of have a soft spot for squirrels, y'all. Have you ever seen a pepper this tall before? By the way, you guys, I've got to tell you something. I was walking down to check on my brassica seedlings here to make sure they were getting enough water. And I heard this little thing squeaking over in the trees. I saw 2 of my cats, Moonlight and Thrigo, were after something. So I run over there, and I look down, and lo and behold, it's a baby squirrel. And it's adorable. So I immediately pick it up. And its little eyes are still closed, you know, it's still itty bitty. Come on. So I picked that little thing up and kind of to keep it from my cats, and then I hear another squeaking. And lo and behold, and there's another baby squirrel. So I end up picking that one up too. And my kids come walking by and I'm like, girls, I got baby squirrels. Could you come help? They came over and they were able to look around the tree. And they ended up finding one more baby squirrel. I wish I had gotten better pictures for you, but everything happened so fast. I ran in, I put them in a little kennel on a heating pad, and I called my mom because my mom was the one that really did all the work when we were raising squirrels. I just got to play with them. And she was telling me that if the mother's still alive, I can put them back under the tree, make sure, of course, to put all the cats in the house, and the mom will bring them back up. So lo and behold, you guys, while I was talking to my mom, Nathan yells over to me and he says, the mama is coming down the tree looking for her babies. So I have Lily run back. Anyway, at this point, I did get some video footage for you, so I'm gonna cut away to that. So y'all can see exactly what the little mama did, because it is just absolutely adorable.
Yeah, hurry.
Wasn't that just the cutest thing? I didn't know that mamas could pick their babies up like that. It's just absolutely incredible. What happened to her poor little nest is we had a pretty intense windstorm, and her nest is way up in this tree. You can't really see it. And what happened is that a section of the nest fell down, the section that had the babies in it. She ended up moving them to a tree over here that had like a little hole in it. So she stuffed her little babies in that hole, and I have no idea. Hopefully she made another nest, or I'm not quite sure what happened. I'm just so grateful that she's taken care of them. Because as much as my kids are excited, they're like, oh, baby squirrels, we're gonna raise baby squirrels. They're about 3 to 4 weeks old. Would have needed to be fed every 3 hours. Yeah, that doesn't sound like much fun to me. So, and of course, Mama can take care of them much better than I can, so it worked out. Oh no, what's that? There's something trapped in that web. Oh, I think it's a butterfly. That makes me sad. Do I save it? Oh, that sun's coming out. Can I save it? Okay. Normally, I would just let nature take its course. But, I don't know. It's a butterfly. Let's get all the web off of it and see if it can fly. Okay. Oh, there it goes. Oh, good. That makes me feel better. Fall is coming, y'all. We're gonna get some relief from the heat. I hope you all are doing well, and please think about any issues that you maybe had this year in your garden that were frustrating to you, maybe things that you felt like failed, and really plan for next year and how you can solve those issues. Because gardening can be such a rewarding experience. There is a lot of trial and error, and I've had my own failures and frustrations. I try to share those with you so that you can see that I also struggle. fact, it's a big reason why I haven't been posting as much this spring, summer season. I've just been beat up. I've been tired. So I feel it too, but I'm not giving up. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna learn from all my mistakes and all the things that I had issues with this year so that I have more success next year. And it's almost fall. So if you are capable, if you live in an area where you can have a fall garden, I highly suggest doing a fall garden. I enjoy them even more in a lot of ways. There's not as many pests to deal with. It's cooler weather. Things grow slowly, which is kind of nice. And there's just nothing like coming out when it's cold outside and picking broccoli or collard greens or mustards and having fresh greens in the wintertime. It's so good for your health too. So if you can do that, I highly suggest it. If you live in the South, mustard greens and collards, y'all, they grow so easy. You can just throw them out and not do anything to them and they'll grow. So that would be a good thing to start with. Alright, I'm gonna head in before it gets too hot. I hope y'all are doing well. Take care. And we'll see you next time.